I'm Haley, the director of Clarinet for the Treble Clef project. Today I'm going to be talking to you about one of the most important things when it comes to playing any instrument, and that's practicing. During this video I will be playing the clarinet as an example, but any of these practice strategies that we talk about today can be used with other instruments as well. And before we get into the practice strategies, I'm going to talk to you about why it's important to practice in the first place. So when you play an instrument, a lot of people might tell you that it's important to practice, and that's because it is. It might seem obvious, but if you don't practice, you'll never be able to get better at your instrument, and you actually might be getting worse. Playing an instrument can require a lot of skills, like finger agility, hand-eye coordination, quick tonguing, and breath support. It's kind of like a sport, where if you don't exercise your muscles for a long time, you'll have to train to get them good enough again. If you're someone who never practices, and I still have not convinced you to practice, here's a personal story. I never used to practice either. Whenever we had practice cards for band class, I would have to write in 0 after 0 after 0, and if I didn't have a band class at school, I probably would not have picked up my instrument for a very long time. But then when I got to high school, I actually started to practice a lot, and something honestly just clicked for me when I played clarinet. All of the things that I hated about my playing before, all of the things that I thought made me sound bad, I was now able to understand where those problems were coming from and how to fix them. Now I love playing clarinet and being able to identify and fix those problems. I feel much more motivated, and I feel happy when I listen to my playing on the clarinet. There is something extremely rewarding in practicing and seeing yourself improve to the point where you in the past would be amazed by you in the present. And if you're still here, I'll assume that you already practice a lot or that I finally convinced you to start practicing. So let's get into the next part of the video, practicing effectively. Despite what the title of this video says, there's technically no right way to practice. Everyone is different, so what works for your friend or for your band teacher or for me might not necessarily be the best way to practice for you. The closest thing we have to the right way to practice is practicing effectively. By using good and effective practice strategies, even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes, you can try to make the most out of your time and improve at your instrument at a much faster rate. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to tell you 6 practice strategies that are effective and helpful to me. The first strategy is that you should never be afraid to sound bad when you practice. I used to do this a lot, where I'd be too embarrassed to practice whenever my family was home because I thought I wasn't good enough and because I didn't want to sound bad in front of them. But the thing is, you're not supposed to sound perfect when you practice. You want to sound perfect when you perform, but performing is not practicing. The whole point of practicing is to be able to find your mistakes and make them better. Someone who plays badly at first, figures out their mistakes, and works out those mistakes will eventually sound much better than someone who skips over all of the hard parts and still has those mistakes at the end. Be proud of your mistakes at the beginning, because that means that you have somewhere to go. Now that you know where your mistakes are and you've played them proudly, the second strategy is to fix those mistakes. This also might sound really obvious when you hear it, but a lot of players, especially beginners, don't actually fix their mistakes. When they're practicing and they play a wrong note, it sounds something like this. I played a wrong note and then I played the right note right after. But why is this bad? Even though I played the right note, I didn't actually fix my mistake. What really happened was I made a mistake, I skated past it, and I kept on going. By doing that, I basically trained my fingers to play the wrong note and then play the right note after, which is the opposite of what you want. So to actually fix your mistake, what you want to do is play that section again, except focus on playing the right note the first time. It'll go something like this. This way, you're teaching yourself to play the section without the mistake this time, kind of like overriding a file in your brain. But if that doesn't work and you start the section over and make the same mistake over and over again, you can try slowing the song down. What I usually do is take a metronome and set it to 60 beats per minute, and then I gradually increase the speed until I get to the correct tempo. Doing this can give your brain a little breather and give you enough time to think about what the right note should be. Another strategy that you can try is to use your pencil. Every musician should always have a pencil so they can mark up their music. If there's a point in the music that you keep coming back to and messing up, or something that you want to remember, just write yourself a reminder. Having marked up music is a sign that you've taken the time to go through the song and find where the hard parts are. When I mark up my music, I usually draw circles for parts I mess up, write in sharps or flats I forget about, write in dynamics, write in rhythms, etc. The third strategy that I have is to almost never play a song straight through. In most songs, there will be parts that are harder and parts that are easier, and if you play the whole song, you're just going to be going over those parts in equal amount, when what you should be doing is going over the hard parts of the song more so that they become easier for you. So you should be dividing up the song. You can divide it by the way it sounds, or just mark out measures that are especially hard for you. And once you've done that, be purposeful in your practicing. Like I said before, you should be going over the hard parts of the song more, especially if you don't have a lot of time to practice. If you only have 15 minutes to practice, skip the easier parts and go straight for the hard parts to make the most of your time. The fourth strategy is to make the song harder than it actually is. You can do this in a number of ways, by changing the articulation, changing the rhythm, or just bumping up the speed of the song so it's faster than the original tempo. That way, once you've mastered the harder version of the song, when you come back to the original song, it'll feel a lot easier. Here are some examples of the things that I do to make my songs harder. If you still need ideas for how to make your song harder, you can try reversing some of the examples that I showed. For example, you can play a short-long pattern instead of a long-short pattern, or you can try putting the quarter note in front of the triplet. You could also try slurring 4 notes, and you can also combine any of the examples that I showed together. The fifth strategy that I have for you is to practice a variety of skills. If you're not in the middle of any songs, or you just don't feel like working on those songs, you can always try other exercises to strengthen specific playing skills. Some things that I like to do are long tones, which are just holding notes for an extended amount of time, slurring exercises, tonguing exercises, and technique exercises. Make sure that when you do these things though, that you're not just playing to play. You should still be listening to your playing and trying to identify any problems that you might hear. Also, if you need a place to start, one really great resource is johnmcallistermusic.com. There are so many great warm-ups and practice exercises there, especially for beginner students, so be sure to look at the link in the description. The sixth and final strategy that I have is to give yourself a break. Knowing when to take breaks from practicing is just as important as practicing. If your mouth starts hurting, or you feel like you're running out of air, or your fingers start cramping, or even if you just can't think straight, you should take a break. Sometimes coming back to a song after a short break can actually be the key to finally getting it right. So those were my 6 favorite strategies to having an effective practice session. I hope that if you watched this video, you learned something from it. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to practice.